we are traveling to a city that is in itself a global spiritual hotspot, Salem, Massachusetts. Even in Salem, a place with hundreds of haunted locations, there is one house that stands out above the rest. A place whispered about with genuine fear, a place where history isn't just retold, it seems to be still happening. It's been called one of the most terrifyingly haunted houses, not just in Salem, but in all of America. I'm talking about the Joshua Ward House. Looking from the outside, it's a beautiful 3-story federal-style brick building constructed in 1784. It's elegant, stately, and was even honored to host President George Washington during his visit to Salem in 1789. But this architectural beauty, my friends, is just a facade. It is a beautiful mask hiding one of the most sinister foundations in American history. Because the Joshua Ward House was built directly on the foundation of an older home. That home belonged to a man despised by the entire town. A man whose brutality became legend. A man who passed on with the curse of his victims still ringing in his ears. We are talking about the home of Sheriff George Corwin himself, otherwise known by his chilling nickname, the Strangler. Today we aren't just exploring a haunted house, we are exploring a spiritual battlefield where the spirit of the torturer and the spirit of the tortured victim still seem to be locked in an eternal conflict. Before we step into the heart of this dark history, make sure you've hit like and subscribe. Your support is invaluable energy that helps us continue this journey. Now take a deep breath. Let's begin. To understand why the Joshua Ward House is so intensely haunted, we can't just look at the brick building from 1784. We have to dig deeper back to 1692, to the moment Salem was plunged into the hysteria of the witch trials. This was a time of fear, religious fanaticism, and baseless accusations. Over 200 people were accused and 20 were executed, most by hanging. And the man responsible for carrying out those sentences, the man who signed the warrants, tortured and escorted the victims to the gallows, was Sheriff George Corwin. George Corwin was a terrifying figure. He became the High Sheriff of Essex County at just 25 years old, a position many believe he got through nepotism, as he was related to powerful magistrates like Jonathan Corwin Waite Winthrop and his father-in-law, Judge Bartholomew Gedney. Corwin didn't just enforce the law, he seemed to revel in his power. He was known for his cruelty, using methods of torture to extract confessions. There were even rumors he invented his own method, tying the victim's neck to their ankles until blood pressed from their nose. While this rumor isn't confirmed, it was enough to earn him the nickname the Strangler. He was also accused of being a profiteer. Under the law at the time, the sheriff had the right to seize the personal property, not real estate, of those convicted to cover jail costs and support their families. But Corwin seemed to abuse this power. He allegedly went to the homes of those just executed, taking everything of value from livestock and furniture to food. He sold John Proctor's cattle and preserved the rest to ship to the West Indies. He seized the assets of Mary English, causing her husband, Philip English, a wealthy merchant, to vow revenge. Personal view. To me, Corwin wasn't a diligent officer. He was a cruel opportunist. He embodied the dark side of the witch trials, someone who exploited the hysteria for personal gain and to satisfy his own brutish nature. He didn't just carry out sentences, he looted the departed. This energy of greed and cruelty was the first brick in the house's haunted foundation. Among the 19 victims who were hanged, one man perished in a different and more horrific way than all the rest. His passing became one of the darkest moments in American legal history, and it is tied directly to George Corwin. I'm talking about Giles Cory. Giles Cory was an 80-year-old farmer, a stubborn and somewhat difficult man. He himself was no angel. Years earlier, he had been convicted of beating one of his farmhands, Jacob Goodall, to his passing and was only fined for it. When he was accused of being a warlock, Cory knew he didn't stand a chance. The trial was just a show and the outcome was predetermined. So he chose a different path. He stood mute, refusing to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. Under English law at the time, if a defendant refused to plead, the trial could not proceed. But the punishment for standing mute was something even more dreadful than hanging, peine forte et dure, a French phrase meaning strong and harsh punishment. And George Corwin was the man who oversaw this punishment. Giles Cory was stripped, laid on his back on the ground. A heavy wooden board was placed on his chest. Then Corwin ordered large stones to be placed on the board, one after another. The goal was to press him until he entered a plea. For 2 days, Giles Cory endured the horrific weight, but he never gave in. According to legend, the only words Corwin could get from the 80-year-old man were a defiant growl, "More weight." Personal view. This is one of the most tragic and defiant moments I've ever studied. It was the final act of defiance from a man who knew he was going to perish. By not pleading, Cory protected his property from being seized by Corwin and ensured it could be passed on to his children. He defeated Corwin with his own passing. Corwin's cruelty reached its peak. When the weight pressed Giles Cory's tongue out of his mouth, Corwin reportedly used his own cane to shove the tongue back into the old man's mouth. It was an image of pure cruelty, and according to legend, with his final breath, Giles Cory unleashed a curse. He cursed George Corwin and he cursed the town of Salem. Giles Cory's curse, it seems, was not just empty word. Just 4 years later, in 1696, some sources say 1697, George Corwin, the mighty Strangler, suddenly passed away at the age of 30 from a heart attack or cerebral hemorrhage. Giles Cory perished from a crushed chest. George Corwin perished from his heart stopping a tightness in his chest. The people of Salem immediately believed Cory's curse had come to pass. Legend even says that subsequent sheriffs of Salem have either passed early or resigned due to heart-related issues, reinforcing Cory's curse. But the story gets even stranger. Philip English, the wealthy merchant whose property Corwin had seized, had returned to Salem. He had relentlessly sued Corwin to get his property back. When Corwin passed, English still hadn't gotten it all back. Furious, English threatened to take Corwin's body and hold it for ransom until his property was returned. Terrified by this threat, the Corwin family did the unthinkable. They secretly interred George Corwin's body right in the basement of his house on the very property at 148 Washington Street. Let's pause for a moment to absorb that. The body of a torturer, a cursed man hidden like a criminal right beneath his own floorboards. This is the crux of the entire haunting. The foundation of this house was desecrated. It wasn't just haunted by the memory of a crime. It became the tomb, however temporary, of the man who committed it. Corwin's energy, his brutality, his fear of reprisal, and Giles Cory's curse. It was all sealed into this land. Years later, Corwin's body was secretly moved to the Broad Street Cemetery, but the spiritual imprint remained forever. Nearly a century passed. Corwin's old house was torn down, but the haunted foundation and basement remained. In 1784, a wealthy sea merchant named Joshua Ward bought the land. He built a magnificent 3-story federal-style brick house right on Corwin's old foundation. It was one of the first brick houses in Salem and a symbol of prosperity. The house was so beautiful that in 1789, President George Washington requested to stay there during his visit to Salem. Personal view. Again, another incredible irony of history. The home of one of American history's greatest villains. Corwin became the resting place for its greatest national hero, Washington. The contrast in energy is unbelievable. Washington slept directly above the spot where Corwin was once buried and where Cory's curse was laid. Did the president feel anything unusual? After Joshua Ward's time, the house passed through many hands. It was once a hotel called the Washington Hotel in honor of its famous guest, and later became office space for various companies including Carlson Realty and the Higginson Book Company. Most recently, it has been beautifully renovated and reopened as a luxury boutique hotel under the meaningful name The Merchant, honoring both Joshua Ward and Philip English. But no matter how many new coats of paint it gets or how many times its purpose changes, the building's occupants from office workers to guests quickly realize one thing: they are never alone. The haunting stories at the Joshua Ward house aren't just vague noises, they are specific, consistent, and deeply frightening. Investigators and witnesses over the decades have identified 3 primary spirits who seem to be trapped here, forming a terrifying, haunted triangle. The first and most terrifying spirit is that of George Corwin. He still seems to consider this his domain and does not welcome intruders. His energy is described as aggressive, hostile, and oppressive. The clearest sign of Corwin's presence is the sensation of being choked. Numerous visitors and staff, particularly men, have reported that while on the second floor, once Corwin's bedroom, or near the basement, they suddenly feel as if a pair of invisible ice-cold hands are tightening around their throat, making it impossible to breathe. This is not a residual haunting. This is a physical assault. It's terrifying because it suggests this spirit is not just an echo. It is conscious and is continuing its brutal behavior. His nickname, the Strangler, remains valid even from the other side. Counterbalancing Corwin is the spirit of his most famous victim, Giles Cory. But Cory is not a gentle, weeping spirit. He is an angry spirit, a poltergeist who seems to still be seeking revenge on the man who ended his life. Most of the activity, like objects being thrown, books flying off shelves, trash cans being overturned, and deadbolts moving on their own, are attributed to Giles Cory. He is acting out, causing chaos in his enemy's home. The S-shaped wax is the strangest and most unique phenomenon here. Staff report frequently finding candles that have melted even when they were never lit, and the melted wax often hardens into a distinct letter S. The third spirit is a mystery, but also the one with the clearest visible evidence. It's a female apparition often called the Lady in Black or the Witch of the Ward House. The most famous story happened in 1981 when the building was the office of Carlson Realty. During a company Christmas party, an employee was taking Polaroid pictures of colleagues. When one photo was taken, they expected to see a blonde female employee. But when the picture developed, it showed a completely different woman. A woman with dark, disheveled hair, pale skin, and wearing a dark, old-fashioned outfit, staring intently at the camera. No one knows who this woman is, but the prevailing theory is that this is the spirit of one of the female victims arrested, tortured, and executed by George Corwin. What's interesting is that this spirit also seems to exhibit aggressive behavior. But it's directed at men. Many men have reported feeling watched and, more alarmingly, discovering unexplained scratch marks on their chests and arms after leaving the upper floor. If this theory is true, then the Joshua Ward house is truly a spiritual prison. We have Corwin the Strangler attacking anyone. We have Cory, the male victim, causing chaos to get revenge on Corwin. And we have the Lady in Black, the female victim, attacking men, perhaps as a belated revenge for what she endured at the hands of Corwin and the male-dominated justice system of the time. The Joshua Ward House, or the Merchant Hotel today, is a unique location. It's not just a haunted house, it's a living monument to Salem's darkest period. The beauty of the federal architecture and the luxury of the boutique hotel today are just a thin veneer covering a foundation built on violence, torture, curses, and death. The fact that George Washington once slept here right on top of George Corwin's temporary grave only adds to its complex history. Today, although the building is a private luxury hotel and not open for public ghost tours as it once was, its reputation remains. Guests lucky or unlucky enough to rent a room at the Merchant might be in for a restless night as they realize they are sharing the space with the Strangler, his pressed victim and a mysterious, vengeful specter. This is Salem, where the past never truly passes on. It simply waits in the darkness in the basement to retell its story to anyone who dares to listen. Thank you for joining me in exploring the haunting story of the Joshua Ward house. What do you think of these three spirits? Is Giles Cory's curse real? And would you dare to spend a night in this hotel? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue walking with us as we uncover the most terrifying mysteries. Goodbye and see you next time.